Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today I want to talk about a video that I just saw my Bridgeford team counterpart put out, Jim Moyna, that I thought would be a really good discussion to have with you guys. He put a video out recently talking about a mistake that he thought he made while we were fishing the Kentucky Lake Bassmaster Open, where he changed the fishing line that he was using from practice to the tournament, and he felt like it made a negative impact on his performance. So, what he said he was doing was fishing a 12-pound monofilament with his Berkeley Fritz side, and then during practice, and then before the tournament, put fresh line on and downsized to 8-pound fluorocarbon, and then found that actually he thought hindered him in the tournament because his bait was diving too quickly and not coming through the rocks as easily. And hindsight's one thing, right? Like, I totally understand why Jim did what he did. I think there's arguments to say if you were getting bit, you should have kept doing what you were doing. That's really not what this video is about. What the video is going to be about is about the impact of the choice of fishing line that you use based on the technique that you're fishing. And this was a great example where Jim made a switch from monofilament to fluorocarbon because he thought it would help him get his bait deeper. And in reality, it actually worked against him, in his opinion. And by the way, if you don't follow Jim's channel, subscribe to his channel because he's one of my favorite YouTubers. He lets you know exactly how he feels, and when he's got good days, it's exciting, and when he's got a bad day, you feel his pain. And he's really good. He's a great individual, great fisherman. A lot to learn from Jim's channel. So check that out. I'll tag at the end of this. I'll tag the video that he put up that I'm referencing with respect to what he thought he did wrong at Kentucky Lake. But ultimately, it's a great segue into the importance of fishing line.
Today's video is brought to you by the Deep Dive app. This has had an amazing new update. As you guys know, I love the water clarity feature. As you can see right here, we're looking at Grand Lake, which just had a whole pile of rain come into it. It went from being really clear to having a lot of dirty water coming in the bottom end of it. Just an amazing feature to be able to determine where the clear water is versus the muddy water. So Deep Dive has just also introduced Stream Flow. Now this is a really cool feature that shows all of the water input coming into certain reservoirs and the amount of water coming in. So they measure it in cubic feet per second. You can see in this case, this is just a small creek, but then you can see the projected as well as the previous flows. If we move up the lake here, get into one of the larger rivers coming in, you can see here that we've got 490 cubic feet per second. And then it shows you that there's not much of a change expected. Now, if there's some rainfall coming, I'm sure those projections will change. If we scoot on over here to take a look at Kentucky Lake and Barkley Lake, much larger river systems, the Tennessee River, you can see what the projected outflow is going to be there, 28,000 cubic feet per second. Go check the Cumberland River here. We got 9.4 thousand cubic feet per second. Just an amazing feature that allows you to see all of the different water flows coming into the different parts of the lake. You can see which ones might be the most affected, which ones won't be affected, see what the projected outflow schedules are. A major feature to help you catch more fish. And that's on top of some of the other new features like the wind effects. Now, the wind effects is really cool because we've had wind effects as part of the app in the past, but all it did is show where the wind was hitting the shoreline the most, as you can see from the dots, the orange and bright red dots, which indicate where the wind is really striking. But now the wind feature also indicates what the wave action is like on the lake itself. So some of the features you're going to get from this is determining where to get from place to place safely by avoiding the heavy, rough water conditions. You'll be able to determine where you may have some of the strongest current flow and some of the places where you can fish to stay protected. Now, along with that, you still have some of my favorite features like the patterns that you've got on the lake that indicate the best baits and lures to fish with. You've also got the water inflow app, which shows you where a bunch of the rain input comes in. That can be an amazing pattern to fish throughout the year. Just a great feature to have. So many positive features anytime you're fishing or using the Deep Dive app. Just points you in the right direction to catch more fish Whether you're a tournament angler or a local fun fisherman that's just out to catch a few fish, the Deep Dive app will help you catch more fish next time you're out on the water.
If we just do a quick summary on your fishing lines, let's just look at the three main fishing lines. You get your monofilament, your braid, and your fluorocarbon. Monofilament generally floats. It stays higher in the water column, has a lot of stretch. Your braided line, zero stretch, tends to also float. Fluorocarbon is kind of a mixture, a lot less stretch, but sinks. Those all have very different attributes to them. And depending on the technique that you're fishing, you're going to want to generally use one line over another. For example, if you're frog fishing or you're fishing really heavy cover, your braided lines are going to become a huge advantage because you're going to be able to set the hook home in heavy cover. You're going to be able to pull a fish out of heavy cover, and you're just going to be able to utilize the zero stretch. If you're fishing, say, top waters, and a lot of times crankbaits, your monofilament can be a better line to use because you have a lot more stretch, which allows you or prevents you from pulling the bait away from the fish, whether they're already hooked or whether you see a topwater explosion. You just have a slower reaction time. The line gives you a slower reaction time, which generally lets the fish get the bait better, and therefore you have better hookups. If you're fishing, say, fluorocarbon, a lot of times for me, that's when I'm going to be throwing more of my moving baits where I want to be able to drive the hook home. I want to be able to keep my bait down. And I want something that is a little bit less visible in the water column. So, like if I'm fishing, say, your vibrating jigs, if I'm, say, light Texas rigs, things like that, I'm going to go with the fluorocarbon. But the main thing here is to understand that there's not always a right and wrong answer. Very, very few techniques do I feel like you have to be using a specific line. Frog fishing, probably one of those. In my opinion, I think a lot of times, depending on the top waters that you're throwing, monofilament is the key too, because if your fluorocarbon sinks, you may end up not having a top water. You have a diving bait because the fluorocarbon's actually pulling your bait under the surface, preventing it to work properly. But in a lot of circumstances, you can use one line over the other to try to achieve certain things. So, like if we look back at what Jim said, Jim was throwing a crankbait and he started off in practice throwing monofilament because monofilament's a great line to throw with your crankbaits, but he was using a little Berkeley Frittside 5, which dives 3 to 5 feet, and he wanted to obtain a deeper diving level. So he made the switch from monofilament to 8-pound fluorocarbon with the idea that the smaller diameter fluorocarbon would let him not only make longer casts, which would then help him get deeper diving depths, but the fluorocarbon would help keep his bait down. And what he actually found was his bait was getting down too fast, which was leading to more snags. And generally, most of his bites were coming up in only a couple feet of water, anyways. So had he stuck with the with the monofilament, he actually felt like he would have been more efficient. Now, I can make a lot of other examples like this. You know, there's a lot of anglers out there that would say, hey, with a swim jig, you have to throw braided line. Well, I would say I probably throw my swim jigs on fluorocarbon line 80% of the time. The only time I'm not is, or I'm throwing it on braid, is when I'm fishing extremely heavy cover. So if you talk to somebody who fishes swim jigs, say in Florida, they'd think you're nuts if you didn't throw it on braid. If you talk to somebody like me who fishes them up on the river around here where I'm fishing more laydowns and I really don't have nearly as much cover to get the fish through, or more than anything, set the hook through, I think fluorocarbon is great. But you have to understand the attributes of each line. So if you want a bait to maybe not dive as deep, think about throwing monofilament versus your fluorocarbon. And you could say the same thing with braided line. The braided line generally does not let your bait get down as deep. If you're looking to get a crankbait down deeper, in that circumstance, you may want to throw your fluorocarbon versus the monofilament. Even though you get more stretch with the monofilament, the fluorocarbon will help you obtain deeper depths. So as much as there is choices to be made between choosing the correct, say, pound test, you also have the choice to make regarding the types of lines to use to help you achieve what it is that you're looking for. You just have to understand, that the different types of line will help you do different things. And it's something that I think oftentimes anglers don't really think about, because most anglers only have one or two rods and they're not going to spool the line up or spool the reels up with different line just based on the lure that they're using. But if you do have the ability to have multiple different rods, or maybe you've got a bunch of spinning reels with spare spools that you can fill up and use different lines, at that point you may want to carry a few extra types of line, spools of line, or a few extra rod and reels that allow you to make the change where you can take a bait, put it on a different rod and reel, and utilize the bait in a different manner. It's just oftentimes I feel like the line goes very overlooked by most anglers, and in fact that line choice can have a dramatic impact on your overall performance. So thanks to Jim for giving me the idea to do this video. I think it's definitely worthwhile topic, and it's something that a lot of us overlook at times. So hopefully you found this useful. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.